her family in our prayers. But as we begin, I'll note that we'll be recording this call to share out to anyone after we've concluded. So anyone who's interested, please let us know and we can get this recording to you. We're going to have a Q&A at the end. But with all of that, I'm excited to pass it off to Auditor Blaha.
Oh, thank you so much, Mally, and thank you all for bringing us together here, especially at a time when in these news cycles, sometimes things get, people move on too quickly from things. So we have a chance today to talk about how the ICE surge is affecting Minnesota. And I want to highlight two things on that sentence. First, that statement is in the present tense. This is still affecting us and will be affecting us for quite some time. I'm also saying it Minnesota specifically because it's statewide. The effects are far beyond Minneapolis, far beyond the metro even. It is permeating the economy of our entire state. Now, just like the brutal directions of ICE targeted our most vulnerable neighbors, the economic attacks have hit the most vulnerable parts of our economy. Now, we've seen the direct costs of ICE action mostly hitting our local units of government. Now, these are our entities that have small, tight budgets and are least able to handle shocks in costs or the economy. Some of those direct costs include things like police overtime. For instance, Minneapolis has estimated that they've spent about $5.2 million in police overtime just from January 7th to February 1st. And that is about double the amount of money they budgeted for overtime pay for the entire year of 2026. Now, you start thinking about that, well, then you also should add in dealing with things like abandoned cars. Our schools have dealt with enrollment drops as students went to online learning, which can affect their budgets in their what revenue they get from the state. And so we're seeing just costs on and on and on that way. Now, add to that, their local economies, which of course underlie their revenue, are experiencing potentially Minneapolis right now, we're estimating at least $203 million in economic damage. 81 million in business losses, 106.1 million lost in wages in the metro. And that would be bad enough. And again, we've seen that going beyond just Minneapolis. And I believe we're looking at, tens of thousands of dollars in surrounding communities for police overtime as they aided Minneapolis and the ICE surge in their own communities. And we're not done yet. We have also seen a targeted attack on our other federal funding. As other secretaries tried to hop in on attacking Minnesota, we saw cuts to Medicaid funding. We have seen threats to energy investments with renewable energy projects potentially being pulled. We've already been dealing with cuts to food assistance, the SNAP cuts. And this is all with a background of tariffs. So you can imagine, we've seen what's happened to our neighbors who weren't able to go to work, or local businesses that were losing customers and employees. But you can go out to and ask a farmer what it's like to be dealing with tariffs and then having SNAP cuts, which directly impact their sales. They have some very direct funds that can come to them from SNAP. And then also now attack their workforce, where the workforce feels uncomfortable coming in. And then wondering, as the economy gets hit further and further, we always know food takes a hit when the economy takes a hit. So everybody from somebody who was afraid to leave their home because they're a person of color living in Minneapolis to a farmer out in Moorhead, everyone is feeling the effects of this ICE surge, and they won't be over for a while. So we need to remember this tragedy is current, it's statewide, and it is affecting our entire economy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Auditor Blaha. Senator Bolden, off to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for, bringing us together and having this really important conversation. So I'm Liz Bolden. I serve in the Minnesota Senate. I represent the Rochester area, which is about an hour and a half south of the Twin Cities. And I really want to emphasize what Auditor Blaha said, that this is not just a Twin Cities issue. This is not just a metro issue. This is a statewide issue. We have been feeling the effects of this in Rochester for months, and it is true, in Moorhead and Mankato and St. Cloud. And every community across the state, and it is ongoing. It is frustrating at times that we sort of in Minnesota feel like news cycles have moved on, as there is like new things every day. But the effects of this are ongoing. It is what is happening is not over here. And what we saw with Metro Surge and the armed, masked, unidentified, violent federal officers in our communities is just the most violent and most maybe in your face mechanism of this, but it is all part of the sort of broader campaign of retribution that is the exact words of the president on Minnesota. And that has taken many forms. A couple I want to lift up are in terms of medical care for folks. I, come from Rochester. We are the med city. I'm a nurse, outside of my legislative work. And so I hear from my constituents every day about the fear and the worry and the realities of what it means for thousands and thousands of Minnesotans who will lose access to healthcare because of the actions of the federal government. People being, losing their access to Medicaid. Upwards of 140,000 Minnesotans are going to lose access to Medicaid coverage, which is, coverage for our most vulnerable neighbors. This is kids. This is our elders. This is people with disabilities losing access to healthcare coverage, and what that means in people's lives is significant. With the increase in the cost of healthcare coverage, there are going to be people who are priced out and are making the choice of like going without healthcare coverage because of the tax credits that were allowed to expire. So people making choices to just not have healthcare coverage and what that will mean in their lives. The other piece I want to lift up is food insecurity, with tariffs, with cuts to SNAP funding, with all the other ways that Minnesotans are feeling their budgets being squeezed. We are continuing to have an increasing crisis in relation to food insecurity. And that has real and lasting impacts for families. And so just want to be clear that this is an ongoing issue, and the impacts of this, even if all of the federal agents leave, even if, things are sort of restored to like normal, the impacts of the trauma and the damage and the harm that has already happened, we are going to be dealing with for a very long time. And, the last thing I'll just say is it has been incredibly difficult and frustrating to manage just the chaos of how all of this is rolled out, of like, there's funding streams are on one day, they are off another day. There's not guidance being shared with the change that they are making. And so in both in terms of like making a state budget and just in terms of, our counties knowing how to implement what they are, saying needs to happen, has just been incredibly difficult. Because the information isn't there, and the sort of chaos around it continues. And so an ongoing issue that we're going to be dealing with for a long, long time, and has real and significant impacts on Minnesotans.
Thank you so much, Senator Bolden. And Representative Tabke, let's close it out with you.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here and just hearing our stories. It's been really, really important to understand and hear firsthand what has been happening in our communities across the state of Minnesota. I'm on the southwest side of Minneapolis. So Shakopee is about 50,000 people. And we have been just absolutely rocked by ICE on a daily, constant, non-ending basis. It has been, as Senator Bolden said, it has been just exhausting. We've been drowning for months, and it is just an absolutely unnecessary thing that's been happening. So I'm coming to you today from a brewery in Shakopee, and we are, I was talking to the owner here, and since the invasion of ICE in our community, they have been experiencing the worst winter that they have ever had, and being in business, and they've been in town for over a decade. We have on our main street in downtown Shakopee, we have two businesses that have closed, doors closed out. As they were cleaning up from the business, it was an ice cream shop that was a Hispanic-owned business. And as it was being cleaned out, ICE was there banging on the doors, trying to get the people who were doing the cleaning out of the building. And so we have another business downtown that went from over $2,000 a day in sales, and they are a new business in our community. They just opened up this fall. They were doing $2,000, and then since ICE came in and was so active in our community, they are lucky if they make $200 in a day. And so this is just unsustainable for our economy, for our businesses, and for things moving forward. We have a lot of amazing things going on here in our community, a ton of construction happening, a lot of really, really wonderful things. But most of that has ground to a halt. Houses are not being built because workers are not coming to work. We have construction companies who are defaulting on loans and going out of business. We have ICE that, commandeered lots and lots of equipment trying to get at workers who were U.S. citizens on a roof that just refused to, and rightfully refused to, show ICE their ID just because they were going after a person with brown skin. And it is just unconscionable what they've been doing in our communities, and just the absolute hit it has taken on us over the last couple of months, where we're at today. And it's really important to understand that this is not over, that this is a continuing process. And we very much expect that this was just an experiment for how they can mess with our communities and communities across the nation, and how they can do this other places, and how they can come back here and affect elections and all the things that we've got coming up with that. And so it's really important that everybody keeps their eye on the ball with this and continues telling these stories about what the federal government has been doing in our community. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here to talk about these things.
Thank you, Representative Tabke. So we are now open for questions. If you could use the raise hand function, and when you ask the question, if you could say your full name and what outlet you're with. But while we wait for reporters to submit their question, we had a pre-submitted question for Auditor Blaha. From a physical and economic perspective, what are you seeing when federal immigration enforcement disrupts local workforces and communities across Minnesota? You're muted.
Thank you. I appreciate that question, because I feel like there are so many numbers here. Trying to get them all in and make sense of them has been a challenge. And that's one of the issues. Local governments had just finished up their budgets, right? They just submitted them to us. They're due at the end of January. They need to submit their budgets to us. And by the time the budgets came into us, they were already wrong. And so you can imagine when you're trying to plan in a way where most of your budget comes from property taxes, that means you get it twice a year. You're going to get them in December, and you're going to get it in June. And you've got a big, long stretch before you get to your next round of income. So people are trying to not only just figure out what happened, but they have to figure out how to rearrange things. And ironically, of course, when you have impacts like this, you have the greatest need in your community. You have more people needing food assistance. You have more people needing support with rent. You have more people who need support with mental health issues and other trauma-related responses. It's at the same time that your economy is dropping, so your property tax, your revenue is going to go down. If you have a sales tax, it's crashing right now. And then add on to that the federal programs you may rely on to handle this, they're also being undercut merely out of retribution. So it's a triple whammy on local government budgets and economies. And a reminder for those of you who aren't from Minnesota, most of our programs, our statewide programs, our federal programs, are implemented through our cities, our counties, our townships, our school districts, our special districts. So this is when you hit that level of government, you hit everything. And that is what has made this particularly upset. If Donald Trump is mad at Tim Walz, okay, that's ridiculous on its face, but the attack has been on your township clerk and your county commissioners. And our most vulnerable people, our most vulnerable neighbors. It makes no sense at all. And that is why it's going to ripple. Chaos is costly. So this chaos is going to ripple through our entire economy.
Thank you so much, Auditor Blaha. We have a question from Elizabeth.
Hi, thanks. This is Elizabeth from NPR. I have a question about this is for Representative Tabke. You mentioned that I'm just hoping to clarify. You mentioned ongoing and current issues. Can you tell me more about some of what you described of the daily disturbance from ICE agents in the community? Is that ongoing, or has that ended and you're now sort of cleaning up what has, the effects of that?
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. I'm really glad that you asked this question for clarity around this. It's really important to understand that ICE is still here. ICE is still in our communities every single day. They are going after our residents, after our citizens. It is a different phase of what they have been doing. It is not as much chaos and just grabbing everybody they see at this point. It does seem to be more targeted in things, but they are absolutely going after many of our citizens, many of our residents, and taking people that I just really don't believe they should have any reason to be going after these people who are in process of getting their immigration status papers figured out, and there are people who are going to court. There are people who are just participating in everyday life that ICE is still going after these folks and stalking people and very much active in our community. So they have not left. They are reduced in numbers, that is for sure. It's we're up to what we think was 3,500 ICE agents at one time, and the ACLU did a Freedom of Information, and that was the most recent numbers we had is that they still had over 900 people, agents still in our communities, and they are still active on a daily basis.
If I could hop in on that too, and I think you can see that reflected in the numbers as well, where you're seeing schools are not seeing the enrollment has not come back all the way back. I'm still hearing from local businesses that they still have employees that are still afraid to come to work. So, and that's not, and that fear is not unfounded. And so this is not, it's not just a bright line, they're gone. We're all back to normal. That's not going to happen.
Thank you. And we have another question from Jennifer.
Hi, guys. This is Jen Bender. I'm with the Huffington Post. I'm in Washington, D.C., so I'm trying to keep a spotlight on what you're doing from a national perspective over here. Two questions. One for Auditor Blaha. I was a couple minutes late to this, so forgive me if you said this already, but can you share some top-line numbers of the economic damage that's been caused by ICE to this date? I think I caught a tail end of you talking about that, but I'm really interested in knowing what numbers you've got in total at this point. My second question is for everyone. I'm curious what aspect of this that you think media coverage needs to stay focused on going forward. As some of you noted, media interest is starting to pull away from this, and there's still plenty going on.
Oh, what a great question to get me to say numbers. Thank you. I'm a former math teacher, so this is my favorite part of any call. Let me just read some top lines that I think are particularly salient. Would be we're seeing over $203 million in economic damage in Minneapolis alone, and that looks like it's about 81 million in business losses, 106.1 million in lost wages in the whole metro. Another couple interesting numbers, 76,200 Minnesotans experiencing food insecurity due to the operation, and a 50% drop in mental health services, which again is also going to be costly because when people aren't getting any sort of health services, that comes back later with people coming in that are sicker, that have more increased health needs, which then shows up on our healthcare, our health insurance premiums. So I think that's the message here, is that this was not just an attack on our immigrant neighbors directly. That would have been bad enough. That is horrifying enough. But they are piling on economic impacts over and above that, and those are continuing. I mean, these and they're so widespread that they may have the reason, you'll see a reason saying, oh, well, we're going to cut the Medicaid funding because we're concerned about some of the spending. or we're going to cut the energy, renewable energy project for some other reason. But when it happens again and again and again, it is clearly a coordinated, targeted attack on Minnesota. And they may have an excuse here and there for any individual situation, but there is no way this much can be happening to one state at once and not have it be part of a larger targeted attack. And that's what I want people to know, is that if Trump gets mad at somebody, he's going to try to hit everybody. And this kind of chaos is going to cost all of us.
I'll just chime in to say the thing that I would like to uplift and be sure that folks outside of Minnesota are aware of is to reiterate something that Rep. Tapke said, is that this is ongoing, that this has not stopped. This is not over. There are still ICE agents in our communities all over the state today, right now. We have not, it is some fewer, yes, but we have not come close to the pre-surge numbers of agents. There's still more federal agents than there are, police officers in our top 3 cities probably. And so definitely ongoing harms being caused. And the other piece I just want to always continue to uplift is this is not just restricted to the Twin Cities or the Metro. This is a statewide assault that we continue to experience.
Yeah, and I would also like to add to this that the thing that I am most concerned about right now and moving forward is the way our federal government has treated Minnesotans and United States citizens and everybody else along with that. Just this campaign of, as Auditor Blaha said, of retribution, and this campaign that is simply here to create fear and to intimidate people into not participating in society and to stay home and to not, and how that will have the ongoing effects of how this affects democracy, how this affects how we handle our local governments, how we handle our state governments. Like right now in the state of Minnesota, we're in session and we have an extraordinary list of things that we've learned just from going through and experiencing what we've experienced, from like a Black Hawk helicopter hovering over my house that didn't have its transponder on. We need to make sure that we have transparency and accountability as to how the federal government has been treating us. And when we have residents who were just taken and windows bashed in, doors bashed in without warrants, like those kinds of things, and that what accountability and transparency we have for those things, that is what I think is the number one thing as a nation we really need to be looking at and really taking a deep dive into right now, is just how horribly the federal government has been treating the residents and businesses in Minnesota, and how that will be affecting use in other places.
I'm sorry, if I can just add one more thing, and this is real in the weeds, but if you look at a local government entity, a city, a township, a county, since they are heavily dependent on property taxes, which are very stable, right? Unfortunately, it's like being on a fixed income. And you can imagine when you have an economic shock, when you're on a fixed income, what do? When you don't have a way to quickly raise revenue, you don't have piles of money sitting around to just pull in for a rainy day. You are in a situation where you can't plan for this. Planning is extremely important for entities that are small and entities that have the effective fixed income of property taxes. So when we get these shocks like this, like unpredictable project cuts, unpredictable cuts to funding, that chaos can't be borne by small entities. If you've got a big boat, okay, maybe you can take those waves. But our local governments, these are fishing boats, right? A couple of them are canoes. We can't take waves like this, and we have got to have Trump stop rocking the boat.
Senator Bolden, you were going to add something there?
Just to follow up on something Representative Tapke mentioned, is the other thing I want to uplift for folks is that Minnesotans demand accountability. And so we are not going to forget about, justice for Renee Good and Alex Preddy. We still have Minnesotan children that we don't know where they are. And so there are a number of spaces where, we continue to demand justice and accountability, and we are not going to forget about those things.
Well, thank you. And we are almost at time, and I do not see any further questions from the press. But thank you all for everyone who's joined, Auditor Blaha, Senator Bolden, Representative Tabke. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and the numbers behind Trump's devastating actions here. To the press, we are going to have a recording that we will send out to everyone. If you have any follow-up questions that come to mind after we conclude, please send them our way, and the panelists here would be happy to answer them. We can facilitate that. But thank you all for joining us on this Friday, and thank you again to our speakers.
Oh, and thank you all for remembering Minnesota.